To the casual observer, she was just another woman worn down by life, dressed in clothes that had seen better days. No one aboard Flight 815 had any reason to suspect that Rebecca Thorne, the quiet figure by the window, had once commanded skies in a supersonic fighter jet, her split-second decisions the only thing between life and death for hundreds of soldiers. But as the aircraft shuddered violently, and both engines began to scream their mechanical death rattles at 35,000 feet, the unassuming woman in seat 17A would soon be forced to confront the life she had tried to bury. Before you hear how this unfolds, let us know in the comments where you're listening from. And please remember to like and subscribe for more incredible stories. Rebecca Thorne, or Becca as she was known back in her small Wyoming town, sat hunched in her seat, tracing patterns in the condensation on the small oval window, the endless sea of white clouds a stark contrast to the dust and grit of her daily life. She wore a pair of heavily patched denim jeans and a threadbare gray sweatshirt, with "The Rusty Spoon" printed in faded red letters across the chest. Her hands, resting in her lap, were a testament to her current reality, calloused, with tiny nicks and scars from endless hours of washing dishes and clearing tables in a greasy spoon diner. A deep, bone-weary fatigue was etched into her features, the kind that comes from working 16-hour days just to make ends meet. A flight attendant with an impeccably bright smile and a name tag that read "Chloe" made her way down the aisle, her cheerful energy a world away from Becca's quiet resignation. "Good morning, ma'am. Can I get you something to drink before we get underway?" Chloe asked, her voice syrupy sweet. "Just a water, no ice, please," Becca replied, her voice barely a whisper. Chloe's gaze flickered over Becca's worn attire and tired eyes, and a wave of professional pity washed over her. "Taking a much-needed vacation? You look like you could really use one," Chloe offered, picturing Becca slinging hash in some roadside stop. "Something like that," Becca murmured, turning her gaze back to the window, a clear signal she wasn't in the mood for conversation. Chloe, however, was determined to be friendly. "I totally get it. Dealing with the public all day is exhausting. I waited tables for 5 years before I got this gig. Some people can be just awful." Becca offered a tight, polite nod, her mind miles away. Chloe couldn't possibly imagine that the woman she felt sorry for once piloted an aircraft worth more than the entire airline's fleet of commercial jets. Becca had led classified operations, her call sign, "Ghost," whispered with reverence in briefing rooms across the globe. She was a decorated hero, a protector. But that was a lifetime ago, before the disastrous mission over the Hindu Kush mountains that shattered her career, her spirit, and took everything she held dear. Now she served lukewarm coffee and burnt bacon at the Rusty Spoon, working from dawn until well past dusk, 6 days a week. Her boss, a kind old man named Sal, never probed into her past, paid her in cash, and let her live in the drafty one-bedroom apartment above the diner. Next to Becca, a man in a crisp, expensive suit snapped open a high-end laptop. Mr. Davies reeked of cologne and ambition. "Apologies," he said, not sounding apologetic at all, as he glanced at Becca's sweatshirt. "Have to prep for a major presentation in Denver. Drone contracts for the Department of Defense." He gestured vaguely at her. "And what is it you do?" he asked with the forced politeness of someone making small talk with the help. "I put food on plates for people," Becca answered flatly. "Ah, an honest living. Can be tough, I imagine." "You must meet all sorts of characters," Mr. Davies replied, his attention already back on his screen, which was filled with technical schematics of unmanned aerial vehicles. Becca could identify every component, every system, every potential point of failure, but she kept her face a placid mask. She had flown alongside prototypes of the very drones on his screen. But he saw a waitress, a woman who probably peaked in high school. He would never guess she held a master's degree in aeronautical engineering and had graduated with top honors from the Air Force Academy. Across the aisle, a young mother tried to placate her curious son, who was about 8 years old and clutching a model airplane. "Mommy, "How does something so big not just fall out of the sky?" the boy asked, his voice full of genuine wonder. "Oh, I'm not sure, sweetie." "It's very complicated science," his mother replied, distracted by her phone. Becca felt a pang, a ghost of the instructor she used to be. She could have explained the principles of lift, thrust, and airfoil dynamics in a way a child could grasp. But she remained silent. Secrecy had become her shield. An older couple behind her were discussing their grandson, a new recruit in the Air Force. "I just worry so much, Harold." "Those jets are so fast and dangerous," the woman fretted. "Now, Martha, they have the best training in the world." "He'll be just fine," her husband reassured her. Becca shut her eyes, the words echoing in her mind. She remembered the grueling G-force training, the endless nights poring over emergency protocols, the overwhelming pride when the commander pinned her wings on her uniform. She also remembered the faces of her squadron, the easy camaraderie, the unbreakable trust. Some were still out there, defending the skies. Others were just memories, their names etched on a cold memorial wall. The plane climbed to its cruising altitude, the flight settling into a monotonous drone. Becca tried to rest, but her mind was a tempest of memories. She remembered earning her call sign, Ghost, because of her uncanny ability to appear undetected on enemy radar. She was a legend. Now she was a nobody, invisible in plain sight. Nearly 90 minutes into the flight, long before the cabin crew or other passengers noticed a thing, Becca felt it. It wasn't the familiar bump and sway of turbulence. It was a subtle, high-frequency vibration, a wrongness that resonated deep in her bones. Her highly trained senses knew something was off. The vibration was localized to the right side, and the engine's steady hum had developed a faint, discordant whine. She pressed her face to the window and saw it. A thin, almost invisible trail of dark vapor streaming from the right engine. A cold dread seeped into her stomach. She knew that sign. It was a catastrophic turbine failure. Most of the passengers were blissfully unaware, lost in movies, books, or sleep. Then, the subtle vibration became a violent, bone-jarring shudder. The plane lurched sharply to the right, sending drinks and laptops flying. The little boy with the model plane burst into tears. The pilot's voice, strained and tight with forced calm, crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We seem to be experiencing some mechanical issues. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for an emergency." But Becca knew. This was far worse than mechanical issues. The pilot was trying to prevent mass hysteria, but they were falling out of the sky. Mr. Davies next to her was pale, his hands trembling. "This isn't normal, is it?" he stammered. "It's an engine problem," Becca said, her voice a rock of calm she didn't feel. But inwardly, her mind was a whirlwind of calculations, processing the acrid smell of burning fuel, the aircraft's severe yaw, the changing pitch of the remaining engine. The shaking intensified. Screams erupted throughout the cabin. The young mother clutched her son, whispering reassurances she didn't believe. The elderly woman began to pray, loudly. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, swinging wildly. In the cockpit, Captain Miller and his first officer were wrestling with the controls. "We've lost Engine 1, the co-pilot yelled over a cacophony of alarms. "Engine 2 is failing. We're losing hydraulic pressure and altitude fast." Captain Miller keyed his microphone, his voice cracking. "Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Transair Flight 815. We have a dual engine failure. I repeat, total engine failure. We are in an uncontrolled descent." Denver Air Traffic Control responded instantly. "Flight 815, we read you. State your position and souls on board. 212 souls. Approximately 80 miles east of Denver. Both engines are gone. We are a glider." On the ground, the message sent shockwaves through the control center. Within minutes, 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons from a nearby Air National Guard base were scrambled, their afterburners tearing a hole in the sky as they raced toward the stricken airliner. The lead pilot's call sign was Raptor, His wingman was Cobra. "Denver Control, this is Raptor. We have a visual on the civilian aircraft," he radioed, his professional calm belying the adrenaline coursing through his veins. What he saw made his blood run cold. Thick black smoke billowed from both engines. The 737 was wobbling like a wounded bird, losing altitude at an alarming rate. "Control, the situation is critical. Heavy smoke, both engines. They're in an unpowered glide and unstable. I don't see how they can make any runway." On Flight 815, the mood was one of despair. People were making frantic phone calls, sobbing their goodbyes. Chloe, the flight attendant, grabbed the intercom, her voice trembling but clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, if there is anyone on this flight with any piloting experience, any at all, please make yourself known to the cabin crew immediately." Becca squeezed her eyes shut. She had made a solemn vow to herself to leave that world behind forever. But as she looked at the terrified faces around her, the little boy, the elderly couple, the arrogant businessman who still had a life to live, she knew she couldn't stand by and let them perish, not while she possessed the one skill set that might save them. With a deep, steadying breath, Becca unbuckled her seatbelt and rose, every eye in the cabin fixed on her. "Ma'am, you need to sit down now," a flight attendant yelled. "I can help," Becca said, her voice cutting through the panic. The flight attendant looked her up and down, the diner sweatshirt, the messy ponytail. "Are you a pilot?" Instead of answering, Becca strode to the emergency communication panel at the front of the cabin. She lifted the handset and spoke with a clarity and authority that had been dormant for 5 long years. "Military escort, this is Ghost, requesting an immediate status report." For a few heartbeats, the only sound on the frequency was static. Then Raptor's voice came back, laced with utter disbelief. "Say again?" Did you say Ghost?" In his cockpit, Raptor exchanged a wide-eyed glance with Cobra. They both knew that name. Every pilot in the service knew of Ghost. She was a living legend, one of the finest aviators the Air Force had ever produced, famous for pulling off impossible rescues. "Ghost, this is Raptor." "Command had you listed as inactive," Raptor said, choosing his words carefully, aware of the controversial mission that had ended her celebrated career. "I am inactive," Becca replied, her voice cold as steel. "But 212 people on this plane are very much active and would like to stay that way," Denver Control cut in. "Ghost, this is Denver Control. We confirm multiple critical system failures aboard the airliner. Can you render assistance?" The passengers stared at Becca as if she had sprouted wings. Mr. Davies, the businessman, was on his feet. "Wait a second. You're a military pilot? A real one?" "I was," Becca said, turning to face the cabin. "Right now, I'm just trying to get us all home." She keyed the radio again, the old confidence flowing back into her like a current. "Denver Control, patch me through to the flight deck, now. Raptor, you're my eyes. Give me a detailed external assessment." "Roger that, Ghost. It's an honor to fly with you," Raptor replied. For the first time in 5 years, Rebecca Thorne wasn't hiding. She was Ghost again, the pilot who never surrendered. The connection to the cockpit crackled open. "This is Captain Miller. Who is this?" "Captain, this is Ghost. I'm a passenger on your plane with extensive flight experience in tactical and heavy aircraft. I'm here to help." Captain Miller recognized the call sign. The stories about Ghost were required reading at flight schools. "Ghost, we're dead in the water. No engines, failing hydraulics. The controls are barely responding." Becca closed her eyes, visualizing the Boeing systems. She had memorized the schematics of nearly every major aircraft in service. "Captain, give me your altitude and airspeed." "Passing through 15,000 feet, descending at 4,000 feet per minute. Airspeed is dropping into the red." The numbers were grim. They were a falling brick, too far from any commercial airport. "Raptor, I need the closest viable runway, military or civilian, now," Becca commanded. "On it, Ghost." Buckley Air Force Base, 45 miles to your northeast. Runway is over 12,000 feet. Perfect. Captain Miller, I need you to execute a turn to heading 045 immediately. But Ghost, that's away from Denver International. Trust me, Captain. We're going to dead stick this bird onto that runway. The passengers, listening on the open intercom, felt a flicker of hope. Her calm authority was infectious. Mr. West Davies was recording the entire exchange on his phone, his earlier arrogance replaced by stunned admiration. Captain, I need you to deploy flaps to 15 degrees, Becca instructed. Ghost, that'll increase our rate of descent. It will also increase lift and give you more control at low speed. Control is all that matters right now. After a moment's hesitation, Miller complied. The plane stabilized, the terrifying wobble lessening. Raptor, what's our approach profile look like? Becca asked. Ghost, you're on a good line, but you're coming in way too high and fast. You're going to overshoot. Becca's mind raced. Captain, we're going to do something unconventional. I need you to execute a series of S-turns. Bank 10 degrees left, then 10 right. We need to bleed off altitude without gaining too much speed. S-turns in a 737 with no power? That's insane. The alternative, Captain, is becoming a crater 5 miles past the runway. For the next 10 minutes, Becca became a conductor, orchestrating a terrifyingly delicate ballet in the sky. From the passenger cabin, she guided the pilots through maneuvers no commercial aviator would ever dream of attempting, using her innate understanding of aerodynamics to control their descent. The base was now visible, a strip of concrete hope on the horizon. Captain, you're doing beautifully, Becca encouraged. Treat it like any other landing. You only get one shot. Ghost, I've never done a fully unpowered landing with a full passenger load, Miller confessed, his voice tight with fear. Captain Miller, Becca's voice was a blade. Listen to me. You are a professional. You have trained your entire life for this moment. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and trust me. Bring her home. The runway rushed up to meet them. Flaps to 30. Gear down. Ghost, without hydraulics, I don't know if the gear will lock. Raptor, visual confirmation on landing gear. Raptor swooped his F-16 under the massive airliner. Ghost, mains are down and locked. Nose gear is down, but status is unconfirmed. It'll have to do. You're on final, Captain. Keep her steady. The plane hit the runway with a deafening screech of tires and groan of metal. It was a brutal landing, but they were down. But it wasn't over. With no reverse thrusters, the massive plane was still hurtling down the runway at over 100 miles per hour. Maximum braking, Captain. Stand on it. The plane slowed, but the end of the runway was approaching fast. Raptor, what's past the tarmac? Negative, Ghost. It's a graded overrun area, soft earth for about 500 yards, then a perimeter fence. Captain, when you run out of asphalt, keep her straight. Let the dirt stop us. The 737 careened off the runway, plowing through the soft ground in a spray of mud and grass. It finally lurched to a halt, nose just shy of the chain-link fence. For a long, breathless moment, silence reigned. Then, a single person began to clap, and the cabin erupted in a wave of cheers, sobs, and hysterical laughter. Becca slumped back into seat 17A, the adrenaline leaving her weak and trembling. She had saved 212 souls. The businessman, Mr. Davies, stared at her, his eyes wide with awe. You're a miracle worker, he whispered. You saved us all. I just did my job, Becca murmured. Emergency crews swarmed the plane. Miraculously, there were no serious injuries. Once on the ground, Raptor and Cobra taxied over, asking to meet the pilot known as Ghost. They were stunned to find a woman in a diner sweatshirt being hailed as a savior. Raptor approached her, his eyes glistening. Ghost, that was the most masterful piece of aviation I have ever seen. You talked them down from the sky. You were my eyes up there, Raptor. We did it together. Ma'am, he said, his voice thick with emotion, My cousin was with the 10th Mountain Division in a firefight near Kandahar. You and your squadron saved his entire platoon. He's alive today with 2 kids because of you." Becca felt a crack in the wall she had built around her heart. For 5 years, she had been haunted by the lives she failed to save on her final mission, forgetting the hundreds she had brought home. He was a brave soldier, was all she could manage. News crews descended on the base. The story of the hero Waitress went viral. A reporter shoved a microphone in her face. "Why did you hide who you were?" Becca took a breath. "Because that person made a mistake that cost good people their lives. I'm just a woman who serves coffee now." But Raptor stepped in. "With all due respect, ma'am, you'll always be Ghost. And that mission? It wasn't your fault. You saved 12 soldiers against impossible odds. Any other pilot would have lost them all." For the first time in half a decade, Rebecca Thorne wept. The weight of her self-imposed guilt began to lift. "Later, mister." Davies approached her, his laptop in hand. "Ma'am, I work for Aerodyne Solutions. We develop advanced aviation systems. We've been searching for someone with your unique operational experience to lead our new flight safety and crisis response division. The job is yours if you want it." Becca looked at him, then at the grateful passengers, at the respectful pilots. "What would I do?" "Exactly what you did today," he said. "Save lives, but on a global scale." A genuine smile, the first in years, touched Becca's lips. As she later walked through the terminal, people applauded. The little boy with the model plane ran up to her. "Are you a real-life superhero?" he asked. Becca knelt down. "I'm just someone who tries to help when people are in trouble," she said. "That's what a hero is." 6 months later, Rebecca Thorne was the new Director of Flight Safety at Aerodyne. She spearheaded new training protocols and helped design fail-safe systems inspired by the very crisis she had averted. Sometimes, late at night, she'd watch the planes from her office window and whisper her old call sign to herself, a reminder of who she was and who she had become again. The story of the Waitress in 17A became a legend, a lesson that heroes are not defined by their uniforms or their past mistakes, but by their courage in the moments that matter. It teaches us that the person next to you might be extraordinary, that everyone deserves a second chance, and that true strength is found not in running from your past, but in using it to build a better future for others.